Welcome everyone. I'm Justin Paperny with White Collar Advice. Thank you for listening, watching our video, subscribing to our podcast. It's a privilege to welcome Jeff Piecka to our show, a client and friend who's surrendering to federal prison on Monday for 34 months. With that said, Jeff, welcome and give us a quick summary of how you became immersed in the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Justin. My actual crime took place just over 10 years ago. I was working at a bank and I was in a very bad marriage, and I thought, just like you talked about in your book, I felt a lot of pressure that I needed to do something that could help save it, even though it wasn't savable. But I felt that responsibility. I needed to do something that to try to keep my family together. And so an opportunity came up where there was an account with government funds in it, and I stole from it, and I used the money and said that I earned a bonus from work, and that was sort of my Band-Aid. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was going to come back to me, but if I could just kick the can down a little bit in order to make somebody happy, then that's what I was going to do. And so and then the rationalization came in where it wasn't an account that was tied to a person. I didn't steal from an organization or a charity or anything like it. It was the government, but I was hoping maybe they won't even know. Maybe I'll fly under the radar and I'll never hear from anything. And so I eventually left the bank, got out of that marriage, and last May, it was just a normal Tuesday morning. It was more of a pound at the front door. My current wife, who I'm with, said, because I'm a heavy sleeper, so somebody's at the door. And so as soon as I opened the door and saw the crowd, I knew it was coming back. It was coming to fruition now. I knew exactly who it was. I knew why they were there. And that was it.
A couple of questions. Well, quickly for everyone watching, Jeff gave us a shameless plug for Lessons from Prison you can get for free at White Collar Advice. Chapter 2 is titled The Fraud Triangle. And of course, our team believes that if you can understand your story, the pressures you faced, how you rationalized it, criminal opportunities you may have seized, if you can show that level of introspection and thought for a probation officer, sentencing judge, a case manager, you're going to advance your interest for release, a shorter sentence, but also how you manage your narrative and your story. So go ahead and grab Lessons from Prison. Think about your own fraud triangle. Jeff, you mentioned 10 years. And before we get into your plans for prison and what you hope to accomplish, 10 years, how long from when you stole for the first time until the feds came, knocking down your door? What was the gap?
The gap was about 6 to 7 years.
Was it on your mind during that time that this could happen, or after such a lengthy period of time were you like, I got away with it?
It was on my mind almost every day. Almost every day. You're sitting at home and you hear sirens outside and you think, is that it? Is that me? Is this where? So it was on my mind, and then eventually you get a little bit more comfortable again, thinking maybe I am, maybe they're not going to find out. Maybe I am under the radar. But it was always there, and there was a lot of stress because you didn't know, I didn't know what was going to happen.
When I was in prison working along my mentor and now business partner, Michael Santos, he introduced me to a lot of philosophy and ethics. And in a philosophy book he handed me, it was the existentialist philosopher Nietzsche in the 1800s wrote this quote that really I think about every day or every decision I make. He said, the value of something isn't what you attain with it, it's what it costs you. So in other words, you would attain money through stealing, but what did it cost you? 6 or 7 years of stress and aggravation of wondering if you're going to get caught. Then you do get caught, you get sentenced, and now you're going to prison. So for everyone watching, whether you're in the criminal justice system or not, understanding what every decision costs you will help you make better decisions and not endure our fate. Now, to your fate, they show up, they do the whole nonsense of wasting taxpayer resources and pounding down your door at 6 a.m. when they could have just served you with a letter. You lawyer up, you're told about the charges. How long until you say, you know what, I did it, I want to accept responsibility?
Oh, I did it in the car ride from where I live in Michigan down to where we had to go in downtown Detroit was about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive, and so it was myself and two marshals, um, and one was driving, one was in the back seat with me. And as soon as we got in the car and pulled out of the driveway, the marshal just started to record, and he said, "Is there anything that you want to talk about?" And I just told him everything. I know exactly why you're here. This is what happened. This is why I did it. This is how. And I'm guilty. I'm 100% guilty.
Now, I know some people may say, whether they comment or not, they may say, "Man, you crazy. Why are you talking without a lawyer? Why are you giving details to them?" Is it because it was kind of cathartic to share it, but also you knew that there was nothing you could do to overcome this or prevail at trial? What was the reasoning behind speaking to the marshals that day versus lawyering up and
Right.
having your lawyer do that?
It was crazy because it was actually a big relief. I mean, I knew I was causing harm to my wife and to my family and embarrassment and whatnot, but it was such a relief to know, okay, this part is over. So now I can speak freely and get it out. And at the same time, I knew I was guilty. I knew I did it. I felt they knew they did it, because that's why they're here. So I'm not going to cause anybody more work than necessary. And the more I cooperate, hopefully my end goal was to avoid time in prison. So the more forthcoming and the more honest I was, I felt like the better. And what's interesting is, it was a very pleasant, easy conversation down to the downtown Detroit office, the holding cell. And as a matter of fact, once I got into the cell, an officer came in and said, "This is from the marshal that brought you," and it was a sandwich, because he asked me if I was hungry, and I said, "No, I'm fine." And so he actually brought me some food when we got down to Detroit. So, but it was a relief knowing that I didn't have to worry anymore. That I could face it, I could be honest, and now it's time for the next step.
So you hire a lawyer, you immediately, or as quickly as you could, plead guilty, and you inch towards a sentencing hearing. From the date that they arrested you, how long until you were sentenced?
Okay. From the day they arrested me to my sentencing hearing I was arrested in May. My sentencing hearing, my plea hearing, was in the middle of December, so about 7 months.
And what were the guidelines for your crime?
It was theft of government funds, and aggravated identity theft.
And the sentencing guidelines were what, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in prison? I know the identity theft has a 24-month mandatory minimum. What were do you know the sentencing guidelines for your case?
The guidelines were a maximum of an additional 18 months, in addition to the 24.
So 42 months potentially at your sentencing hearing could have been realistic.
Correct.
And for everyone watching, Jeff retained our team just recently to help him prepare for prison, to have a productive prison experience. Our team loads when we hear prison's boring, there's nothing that you can do. Utter and complete nonsense. It can be a wonderful time to recalibrate, to think, to plan the next phase, to grow closer with your family. So while the majority of people reach out to us to prepare for sentencing, in this case, Jeff went to sentencing on his own. And I think he did quite well, given the range was 42 months, or expectation could have been 42 months. Tell everyone watching and listening what you received.
I received a total of 34 months, so the mandatory 24. Initially, the judge was leaning more toward the maximum before the sentencing hearing. And then my attorney said, after hearing from myself and at the sentencing hearing, basically admitting to everything, being very cooperative, and being honest about everything, that he actually moved toward the minimum. So yeah, I actually got the minimum of what I was facing.
As you surrender to prison, and this is how I'd like to complete this podcast and video, before people go to prison, Many have big aspirations and goals. I'm going to run, I'm going to write, I'm going to think, I'm going to create, but whatever, I'm going to get more educated, develop new skills. Then oftentimes, and you'll see this when you surrender on Monday, while there are many people that are optimistic and hopeful, prison is a negative environment. Misery loves company. It's very easy to get down on days where you miss home and think perhaps the sentence may be too long. So everyone watching and listening, I encourage Jeff to do this video to memorialize what it is he hopes to do. Get on the record some of his goals in prison, because then he's either going to do them or not do them, because he's going to be on the other side here quickly, and he's going to have this video and podcast to say, wow, I told people on June 3rd, 2022 that I was going to be held accountable. I was going to do this, and he's either going to do it or not do it. So let's talk about a handful of things you intend to do while you are in prison. What are some specific goals you have? It's 34 months of your life.
When I heard that it was going to be 34 months, initially my first conversation with Sam Mangel, actually, I was, you know what, I want to come out better. You know, I go back to the story about, you know, Dante that you again mentioned, where I have to go through this in order to be better on the other side. And so somehow I got to find a way to, when I exit on whenever that last day is, I'm a better person, more educated, whatever the case is, than when I went in. And initially my thought was, man, you know, I would love to learn a second language. I would love to learn to speak Spanish. I would love to, you know, have, you know, these skills that I can come out with. And after hearing my story and you know, the guidelines and going through what your team could possibly help me with, Sam's initial response was, you're not going to be in there long enough. So that was actually encouraging. But that's the part, if I don't have that much time, that's the part that I'm actually most worried about. Is, you talk about it a lot, is how, what am I to do? How do I, you know, you always talk about documenting and stuff like that, and telling your story while you're there and how you're getting better. And that's kind of where I need the most help. Is, okay, you know, I'm a great student, so, you know, give me some guidelines as far as what I can do to make sure that I have it in my hand, so when I come out, as soon as I come out, I want to get back to work.
So the advice that I would give you and give anyone watching, you found our team in part because we created some asset, some piece of content that compelled you to pick up the phone and call us, and you spoke with Sam, who's our vice president of sales on our team. We didn't solicit you, we didn't cold call you, we didn't hustle you. You found something of value and you reached out to us. Well, think about that for a moment. If you're a very good salesman, and while you can't return to the banking industry or government work perhaps, it doesn't diminish your ability to sell. You're a very good book salesman. You've promoted the book inadvertently 7 times in this interview. But what I mean by the creation of assets is, while you're in custody, like David Lippman or Scott Laney, they created their own website. Now, you don't have to have your own website, so to speak, but you want to be creating assets or content that shows what you're learning, how you could be of value to an employer or funder or business partner down the road. That content could be shared with a probation officer, just like Lessons from Prison was shared with my probation officer. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be a 3-page letter. So I'd encourage you to dive much deeper, and I know you'll be working with this, spending more time on this with Sam, more deeper beyond learning a language or reading or developing skills. You really want to get specific, like you're going to find a job in prison that you do, because people give you an opportunity. You can pay someone to do your job. You'll do your job for an hour or two. You should find a job that takes a minimum amount of time, so you have more time for introspection and planning. Some guys will work 10 hours a day just to stay busy. They don't feel like they're in prison. But as you listen to in the podcast on the U-shaped curve, they release with a whole new set of anxieties because they weren't productive enough in prison. So I'd encourage you to find a job that's an hour or two a day, won't be hard, and then get more specific on what these goals are. If it's a second language, fine. I'd encourage you to develop your sales skills, your marketing skills, and your writing skills, because sharing that work from prison is very transformative. It can be a newsletter. You'll have access to email. So I'd encourage you, before you go in on Monday, and again, I know you're going to be speaking with Sam, to get very clear about what it is you intend to do. You're going to write 1 letter home a week. That's 500 words. Maybe it's you write 2 blogs a week, or 2 pieces for your network. 500 words a blog, that's 1,000 words. That's 4,000 words a month. After 12 months, you have 50,000 words. Well, that's the same size as lessons from prison. So what our team is a believer in, you want to create assets or content that can influence people. If not, they're going to know you're a convicted felon, you're a thief, you're like Bernie Madoff, you're trash, you're scum, you're a criminal. If you don't work, and some people will always say that regardless of what you do, but for the people you need to bring into your network, you need to demonstrate, much like a sentencing narrative, who are you? What have you learned? Where are you going? Why will you never return? Why can you be of value to people? That's what I need you to do while you're in custody. And if you can do that, you'll never be bored, because you're going to hear that every day in prison. It's so boring. There's nothing to do here. It's so boring. That's why guys engage in the prison hustle. So I really want you to get very specific with how much you may write. With whom will you share it? What type of books will you read? You know, a lot of guys read books that like John Grisham. Well, you might as well be watching a movie. You should have your book list formed, an Amazon wish list created, so people like Sam and me can send you the book. Write a book report about it. The point is, I want you to get very specific. Only then will you know if you're on track. Is this resonating?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Okay, good. Very, very good. I know you listened to some of our podcasts, you know, Avoiding Perfection in Prison, the U-shaped curve. Did those resonate with you and help you understand how anxiety really pops up towards your release if you're not immediately productive in those early days? Walk us through your understanding of that.
Absolutely. The U-shaped curve definitely hit because, again, I want to come out better. I don't want to come out worse, and I don't want to come out thinking life inside is better than outside. And so that struck a chord as far as making sure that when my time comes, that I'm looking forward to the opportunities that I have on the outside, not wishing I had the structure, you know, on the inside, or all the free time I'm going to miss. That was very important, as well as like we talked about the fraud triangle, because that I felt at least it made sense to me. And if someone else documents it, then that means it can't be just me. Mm-hmm. There's got to be other people, and so being able to help others as well. When I come out that are in my situation, and let them know, hey, you know, you will come, this is how you can come out better.
Well, you are helping people, because people watching this will hear how you immediately accepted responsibility, the price you paid for cheating, and how long it took. So it's also a cautionary tale for people who are watching, but they hear how you quickly accepted responsibility. You've kept your health, you've managed your family, you're living with dignity. You got a shorter sentence than the 42 months you could have expected. And I admire you. Our whole team admires you for going on the record to discuss it, to help, to put yourself out there. And the beauty will be holding you accountable while in prison, something our team will help do, and making sure that when you're on the other side, you're ready to thrive. So I personally thank you for hiring White Collar Advice, for working with our team, and for letting our team join your family through what has been a difficult experience. I'm very grateful that you've done this.
I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you.
You're welcome.